If you want to learn more about effective management, head over to mattsingers.com and sign up for my free management training.
Welcome to the Mad Singers Management Podcast from madsingers.com, where entrepreneurs and business managers learn and share. If you like the show, don't forget to leave a review.
Hello, and welcome to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Today I'm joined by Chris Wilson. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hi, glad to be here.
Excellent. And Chris, there's still people around the world who don't know about you. Who are you? Tell us all the sleazy details.
Sure. I'm Chris Wilson. I'm founder of a performing arts school called the Academy of Music and Art, and we are a music, art, dance, and theater school in Westmont, Illinois. That's about 19 miles west of Chicago. And we are like an after-school and evening education program. In 2019, before COVID, we had about 650 clients coming through the office at any given period of time, a staff of about 25. From a management standpoint, one manager, two assistants, and then the rest are teachers giving lessons and teaching classes.
Cool. That sounds like a lot of fun. Very different.
It's a very cool business. Yeah.
Awesome. Are you into art yourself, or how did you get into this whole thing?
Sure. I graduated from Berklee College of Music in 1990 with a degree in music. I'm a guitarist by trade. And, in school, when you're in high school in the United States, they say, don't go into the arts because there's no jobs. There's nothing waiting for you when you get out. And they were 100% right. I graduated from college. I didn't have a job. There was I had no marketable skill besides playing the guitar, and I was really good. So I opened a guitar school in my apartment, and it just went from there. The business took off right away, and my apartment building said, you can't operate a business out of your apartment. So I had to rent a space. And then as I got more clients, I started hiring people, and immediately, you had employees, which was a whole nother, and this would have been going back to maybe 1995, had no preparation or anything. I was like, all of a sudden one day I had people calling me up, asking me what they were supposed to do. And that was eye-opening.
Yeah. Interesting. That's a good way to start a business.
You jump in, right?
Definitely. So obviously your business have a few different challenges that most people don't actually see, but in terms of, working with not full-time staff as much, because it is a very creative field. So what's the particular challenges that you're facing the most, and how are you dealing with those?
Sure. And we're part of what they call in the United States, and I think this is a widely used term, the gig economy, where this is, someone has something they want to do. They want to be an actress. They want to be a singer. They want to do something. And so they take this other side job, this sort of side hustle to support them to make ends meet. And so my teachers, they're 100% part-time. None of them really would like full-time jobs. If I said, hey, could you work during the day in the summer? We have summer programs. 90% of them are like just not interested, or don't want to commit the whole summer because, what if an audition comes up? What if this comes up? What if that comes up? So it is very much a part-time staff. At the same time, they're teaching lessons to kids or to adults. And so there's this relationship you're building with your client, with your student. And it's very difficult to build that relationship if every 6 months you're turning over your staff. So you have this great piano teacher, you love them and they're great and they're fabulous. And then 6 months later, they get a job and they're going to be in Indiana for 6 months. And so then you have to have another person come in here. And so there is really not necessarily continuity in the staff. And so as a business, that is very challenging from a customer standpoint. Just as I'm getting to know you, just as I'm getting to like you, you're gone. I know other people in like the health club industries, personal trainers, for example, have that issue as well, where it's very much a part-time job until they go do something else.
Yeah, and definitely tried that one on my own skin. So lots of personal trainers who are like starting out and like, this is what I want to do. This is my dream.
Right. Yeah.
And it was your dream for 6 months, and then it wasn't your dream anymore.
Right. Yeah. And it's funny, the personal trainer store I knew, the guy who was in it shortly was like, yeah, it was like you work from 5 a.m. to like 8 a.m. and then they expect you to come back from, and work from 5 to 7 or, so you have your day free, but you have these weird, like 3 hours of work and then a 9-hour gap and then another 4 hours of work or 5 hours of work. Yeah, it's very difficult to have a life. Other physical therapists, I think, face a similar problem, and they're dealing with basically professionals, doctors of physical therapy, where it's, you're working one place 1 day a week, another place 2 days a week. So it's difficult.
Interesting. So what's been the best sort of tips and tricks to get the most out of a difficult situation like that? Like, what are the things you've learned that works well for you?
Sure. Because when we started out, I went to a management seminar and there was a speaker and he was great. And he said, you can't manage people. You can only manage agreements. And so I was like, okay. So they said, if you sit down with the person, you write out an agreement. And then if they break the agreement, well, they've broken the agreement, then you let them go. And so you burn through 100% of your staff in 6 months. So that did not solve the problem. But where I got actually a great idea was I was actually on vacation in Los Angeles. And I was staying at a hotel in West Hollywood. It was the one that Gordon Ramsay's restaurant was in. And I was sitting talking to the manager, and I said, well, how do you manage all these waiters and waitresses? They're all, they want to be an actress. They want to be on auditions. They're all doing this. Like, how do you get a reliable, how do you run a reliable Michelin-starred restaurant with like people in this gig economy? And she said, you have to be really flexible with them. You have to say, all right, I'm going to give you these days off, or I'm going to work on your schedule, but you have to have someone to cover your shift, or you can't give me, 5 minutes notice. We need to work this out a couple days in advance. You need to talk to your clients and let them know what's going on. You can't just disappear and be like, too bad. You're going to need to either, and if you can't see them in person for some reason, because you have to leave right away, you have to call them up, or you can make them a video and say, hey, listen, I just want you to know I'm going to be performing this Shakespeare play and it's in Michigan. And so I'm going to be gone, but your new teacher is going to be this person. And this is how the handoff is going to be. And so it becomes this idea of you broke the agreement, you're gone, right? Now you've lost your reference, hard feelings, to, all right, we're going to let you step out and go do your creative thing. And we're going to let the students know about it. We're going to tell the clients, look, they're going to be back and they're going to be better because they've been performing, and they're going to tell you what a real life audition is. And they're going to tell you what it's like to perform on stage. And then they're going to bring that back to the school. And if you want to go back to your old teacher, you can, or if you like the new teacher, that's okay too. And so giving them that flexibility within reason was really one of the best things we took on. And I found that I was able to do it because as the person who owns the business, you're the person who has to be there all the time and be rock solid and everything. And so I was able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks doing something. Now, that might have been a vacation in Paris. It wasn't necessarily a gig. Sometimes it's just wanting to get away. But it could be I'm going to a meeting and it's actually, you're in Nashville or something like that, having a good time. But it enabled me to step away from the business and enabled a sort of creative, this culture of everyone sort of leans on each other. So we found that people didn't abuse it either, because initially it was like, well, what if we did this, and the person just sort of like, you give them a little bit and they sort of take this mile and now all of a sudden you've got headaches. And everyone really appreciated the flexibility and they sort of embraced the system. And what we found is, there were a lot less conflicts than people thought. How many auditions a year did they have? Well, they weren't going on auditions every day. They were going on 2 or 3 auditions a year. So you're missing 2 or 3 days a year. That's not a big deal. If you had to be gone for a week because you have a show or someone's doing a movie or they have a big dress rehearsal or something, we can work around that. And to the clients, we say, look, this is a benefit because they're going to bring back real world experience. This person's going to be on stage, they're like, in the ensemble cast in the back right-hand corner of Wicked, but they're still on Wicked, or they're doing whatever, some kind of major musical, and they'll be able to tell you about it. What was it like working with this person or that person? So that's how we really embraced it. And it was just, a simple conversation with the manager of Gordon Ramsay's West Hollywood. So
nice.
Yeah, that was great.
We can learn from anyone around us. So
it's
always the best advice comes in the funniest places.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
excellent.
I probably shouldn't have been talking about work while I was on vacation in West Hollywood, but I couldn't help it. I saw
honestly
an opportunity.
When you're a business owner, it's hard not to sometimes. So
That's for sure.
What you live and breathe. So,
yes.
Okay. That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Any other particular challenges you feel with the type of business you have that, any particular challenges that you feel that, you've managed to solve in a very good way?
Sometimes you have people, one thing is, let's say, so we're a school, so people are teaching lessons in classes. And so they're graduating from school with a degree in dance or a degree in piano, a degree in art, but they're not trained as teachers. And so we found initially we had, highly qualified people as far as their instruments and their skill level, but they couldn't teach. I guess it would be like if you had a degree in accounting and you were a CPA and you really understood accounting, but it's like, okay, great, we're going to have you teach an accounting class. And it's like, well, I don't know how to teach an accounting class. And so as a business, we started a training and mentoring program to say, okay, we're going to take someone who has the knowledge and the skills and teach them how to teach other people. So we could, if we could find someone who has a degree in education, who works in the public school system, that's great. Those people aren't always available because they're really in high demand in the public schools, and we really can't match their, payroll and benefits and all the stuff you get from being a civic employee. So we started a mentoring program to say, okay, here's a senior teacher who really knows how to teach, and before this person who's a great musician or a great dancer is going to get in front of a classroom or get in front of students, we're going to mentor them and work with them and show them there's a teaching system and how to organize your lesson plans. And that made them more comfortable. Because I think if you go in there and they're just, hey, I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to try to give lessons and figure out. And it's a disaster because you're uncomfortable. You don't know what to do. You might lose some clients just because you're not very good at it. And then there's holes where they could be making money. And so that mentoring program really helped out as far as training and getting the teachers up to speed. And that when we did it, it seemed like, wow, am I going to be spending a lot of money on training? Am I going to be doing all these hours, of time? How much training do we have to do? And it's literally like a series of 15-minute conversations. So you might talk to someone, and we would do it over the phone, or now everyone does everything over Zoom. You might talk to someone for 15 minutes and say, okay, well, here's what you're going to be seeing, next week. Check in with them in a couple of years. You should really think about doing this. How would you organize that? And just, little assignments and just little mentoring ideas of how to approach things and things to think about. Because often they don't have, the training, especially if you're working with kids or beginners. So if you take someone who has a doctorate in music and you're going to put them in a room full of third graders, as qualified as the person is, they might not know how to manage a classroom, or even how do you effectively communicate with a second grader or a third grader.
Yeah, I love it. And one of the things that I focus a lot on delegation with my both employees and managers and so on, right? Because that's
absolutely.
I'm a firm believer in the fact that the best way to learn is to teach, and that follows this pattern as well, right? I've always been a huge fan as well. I mean, obviously in the arts, it might be slightly better with people in general, but because I'm very much in the tech world, a lot of people are, sometimes uncomfortable with other human beings and things like that. So I've found a lot of benefit in sending my staff to like Toastmasters and things like that, which is basically like sort of public speaking and so on, right? And that it doesn't necessarily teach you to teach, but it teaches you to communicate better. And like a lot of teaching is exactly that, right? So
for sure,
standing up in front of a group of people and actually being able to get your message across, that's really the essence of teaching, right? So
oh yeah, for sure. And we think of artists as maybe these outgoing people and performers, but a lot of them are really shy and they're just not comfortable talking to the people when you walk them through the process. And so one of the things, we have an operations manual. So it's this thick, and it's like every possible scenario of what you would do. That's like, okay, you're gonna have to go out there and greet the parent and say hello to them. And it's like, I have to talk to people. And they're the introverted artist who sat in their room and played guitar, for 14 years. And now they're going to come out into the world. They're this virtuoso guitarist. And it's like, you have to actually be able to talk to and you have to get used to it. You're going to have to shake hands. You're going to have to say hello. You're going to have to make eye contact. You're going to have to talk to the kid. You're going to have to, after the lesson, go out and tell the parents how smart their kid is and how great their kid is. And here's what we're working on. And here's the plan. So definitely that would be another, if you're a small business person, hopefully You have the operations manual and the systems. I think we've all heard of Michael Gerber's E-Myth. Everyone talks about that book, and having processes and systems for everything. And that allows you to delegate so that you can be somewhere else whenever you need to be, or even want to be.
I mean, that's definitely from my management consulting, the number one thing I work at is delegation, right? It's
Oh, yeah.
It's the one thing most people struggle with. And the concept sounds straightforward, but actually doing it is not always so, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And it's delegation, not abandoning, right? It's here's what I need you to do, and here's how we're going to do it, and not, okay, we're never going to speak about this again, so I'm going to come in and check in with you. Not that I don't trust you, but okay, let's see how these are going. Oh yeah, hey, you're getting this. Hey, don't forget to do that. So definitely not abandoning the person, but delegating, and you progressively spend more time just kind of checking in with them. And I think it's The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Entrepreneur was a book that really influenced me, where it was like the 4 stages of developing a person, to where you're just you get to the point where you're just checking in with them, and it could be just a 1 minute phone call with them saying, oh, hey, I just want to make sure this is going on. Great. Everything looks good. Hey, I just want to make sure you let them know that you're paying attention, that you haven't abandoned them, but you don't really need to spend that much time with them. I have a great office manager who happens to be an actress as well, and she's on TV and things like that. And I don't have to really monitor closely. I check in and I make sure she knows I'm there, and that that everything is going well, and that I'm paying attention. At the same time, I don't really need to go through everything she does. So I've been able to really sort of train her and delegate quite a bit of responsibility to her.
Yeah, and that's the scenario you want, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I actually, one of my favorite books around systematization and so on was from a guy called Sam Carpenter, and it's called Work the System. And that's,
nice.
I mean, it's different than the E-Myth. The E-Myth is more sort of a fully fledged system, but Sam really goes through it in detail, like specifically the system part.
Nice.
I think, again, it's one of those things people are like, yeah, I'll do that in a while. I need to grow bigger first, and then I will do it. And the problem is you won't grow bigger if you don't do it. So it's,
or you grow bigger and it blows up, right? Like you get this influx of customers. Definitely. Yeah. And it doesn't, if you're just starting out, or maybe your business is growing, your system can be simple. You want it to be easy to follow. So you don't want so many things and so many details that the person, it's not like you're trying to build IKEA furniture and this is like this insurmountable. We try to break everything down to 4 or 5 easy steps. Hey, you need to do this. You need to do this, this, and this. Check the boxes as you go, and that's it. And so it's a very small, easy to digest system. And as they get those things down, you can become more complex. And even with the teachers in their lessons, we try to break it down to, okay, beginning, middle, and end of the lesson, and okay, here's what the beginning looks like. And then within that beginning system, you might have a couple points you could cover 1, 2, 3 of these 4 things. You don't have to do them all. In the middle part of the system, step 2, you could have these things you could do, and pick the ones that seem appropriate. With system 3, at the end, you're going to wrap it up like this. And there's things, hey, every class or every lesson ends with, here's what you did right today. This is great. And here's what you accomplished today. And here's what you're working on for next week. And then same, you go tell the parents, they want to hear how great their kid did. Here's what we did. They accomplished this. Here's what we're working on for next week. And it's a really basic 3-part system that works as long as you follow it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's one of the key things, right? Particularly when you're teaching the same classes over and over again, it's obviously easier, right? I guess the biggest challenge is like if you're starting a new type of class or something and you need to develop the framework. That's probably what takes the most effort.
Yeah, because you really don't know, especially when we're thinking about the framework and we're saying, hey, I think this is the concept of what the class is going to be like, and let's go with this, and this, 3 points. And then we'll have these subsets, and then you try it out and it doesn't really work. And so now you've got till next week to figure out something that will. Or you check in, hey, how did this new program go? These things worked, these things didn't work. Or the kids, maybe they learned slower than you think, or they learned faster. There's always that type of thing, because you're interacting with people like, yeah, they had it immediately. And so it's like, okay, well, now you got to fill another 45 minutes. What can you fill? Or it's going to be a lot slower.
Yeah, human beings are sometimes human beings. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
yeah, it's always a challenge. But that's
absolutely.
yeah, interesting. Other particular management issues that you faces on a regular basis, like what other things do you feel is big in your type of business that
The other thing is it really is typically for people a very short career. You don't meet, like I'm 54 years old, you don't meet a lot of older veteran music teachers. It typically for people is something you're sort of in this gig hustle economy for a very short period of time of your life. So if you graduate from college and you're 22 and you really sort of are trying to figure it out for 2 years, usually I feel like people come to me and they're about 24 years old, and so they're trying teaching for a while. But it is a very short career. So, they're coming up on 28, 29, they move somewhere else, they move back home, because many people move to Chicago. They're afraid, they want to do something in music or the arts. They're afraid to move to New York or LA, or Nashville is too competitive. So they move to Chicago and they try to get something going here. And if something doesn't happen, and let's face it, you're at 1,000,000 to 1 shot, they don't stick with the industry and try to evolve in it. They typically leave the industry and do something else. So they get into IT, they become a nurse, they almost always do something else. So it's not really a long-term career. So you don't really have the benefit of having veteran employees. Very few people stick with it. Maybe 5% stick with it as a long-term career. So you don't really get that senior level of mentors. It's one of those things I have to usually be directly involved. And then someone who's maybe, in their late 20s, who's been with me for 4 or 5 years, can step in and really help out with the teacher training and getting the younger teachers sort of up to speed as far as that goes. But it really is just, it's not typically a long-term career. At some point, they either feel pressure from maybe their families to get a real job, or they might get married or just want to buy a house, or they might not like the evening hours. But yeah, that would definitely be a challenge, that you don't really have long-term people in it. As far as like senior, you wouldn't have someone with 20 years experience or 30 years experience. That's really unusual.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of if there's other fields that are similar, but actually, well, I guess sports or high level elite sports is probably the same.
Sure.
But,
Definitely. Yeah. It could be, I guess, if you were, in the sort of gig economy where it's like part-time people. I know someone who owns a hair salon. And so it's one of these things, like people become a hairdresser and they do it for 5 or 6 years. And then after a while, they don't typically stick with it. And if they do, they might open their own salon or something like that, which is a whole different thing. But that was an example of someone where it's like, they're not really, they're not in it older. Martial arts studios. I know someone who owns a couple martial arts studios, and you have these people in maybe their early 20s who are teachers and things like that, and they're really committed to it. But as they get older, they don't really have time for the part-time job. They might be able to teach 1 class a week, maybe not. But sort of grown-up life gets in the way. And so, yeah. So, and I feel like, so there is that thing that typically, if you're the business owner, you are, having other people around you who are sort of senior level. It's really unusual. In sort of this, service sector, gig economy type of thing. Definitely. Restaurant industry, same thing. You have these sort of trainee chefs, but do you really want to do this to really ride out that grind and try to become, a chef like Gordon Ramsay? Very few people want to have the perseverance to stick it out.
Yeah, I guess it's probably it's probably a slightly bigger than some of the other industries you mentioned, but that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, I'd say in the online business world, you sometimes have it with all these people,
Sure.
Who read the 4-hour work week, and it's like, oh, I want to work online from anywhere. And now I'm sitting in Bali, and 2 weeks later, I'm sitting somewhere else. And the benefit, though, is if you're running a good business and you do have an attractive job, etc., then it is something people can commit to longer term generally, because even when they go back home and so on, they can often keep doing that kind of work, right? So that's one of the advantages. But there's also a lot of those people that kind of feel like, oh yeah, I can just get a job and it's easy. And that the challenge with most with most individuals like that is obviously they look at it from a personal perspective, i.e. from their perspective, which is natural, but that doesn't necessarily always tie up with what a business owner is looking for, right? And how a business operates. So there's always some challenges in that regard, but
you really hit on something, because it is, when you're, say, a music person, it's a very personal thing. Like if you're even as a student, if you're in law school and the teacher doesn't like your legal paper, well, it's just a paper, you just wrote it, right? You might not be happy with what he says, but it's just like he didn't like your paper. If you're in school for the arts or music and they don't like what you played or what you created, that's like that's like a personal attack on you. So if you tell someone, hey, you need to change how you're teaching, it's as if I'm attacking them personally, or we can work on your teaching. And so it is that personal perspective that they have, that they don't necessarily see. No, this is just a business. I'm just trying to make it run better. This isn't about you. And it kind of flips around to, you're the evil business owner now, right? Yep. Who doesn't understand me? So, so you definitely hit something there, the personal perspective.
And I think, obviously things are changing very fast with COVID, right? And I think it's going to be very interesting, let's say post-COVID, and just in terms of what actually happens, right? Because I definitely see the world of jobs being totally changed. I think it's actually happened to a large degree already. I mean, the amount of people, particularly in the US, like the amount of people who have moved from LA and New York and so on, either back to their home states or, somewhere else where their partners from or whatever. I know a lot of people that have done that already, right? And it's going to be very interesting to see what the big areas are going to look like when this thing is over.
Well, and I do think people like the idea of working remotely. So it's like, I think Tony Robbins was one of the people who said, we're in this big upheaval right now and we're all working from home and everything's on Zoom, and will everything go back to normal? What if people don't want us to go back to normal? Like, what if people don't, like I haven't bought gas for my car since like November. I mean, I don't drive anywhere. I don't need to drive anywhere. I don't have to drive to work. I can do, everything's online. Everything's over Zoom. Now I'm paying rent on a pretty big space. But it is really nice not to have to commute. It is really great to, for the convenience to say I'm going to work and I just step into my music room and turn on my computer and I'm at the office. So will the people want to go back? Will staff want to go back to work? I mean, we don't really know.
Oh, that's how is your business coping with this whole situation? Like, can you still teach a little bit, or like what's the scenario?
So it was interesting because we have our staff members that are younger, and they're from all over the United States, all over the world. And one of our staff members at the end of February is from China. And she said, hey, I don't know if you've heard of this COVID virus. And I was like, yeah, I've heard something about it, but they said it's nothing. She's like, it's really horrible. And they're going to shut everything down. So I just want you to know, like, when it breaks out here, I'm going to be working from at home. I'm going to do Zoom. And I was just like, okay, I was like, okay, but I'm thinking in my mind, are you crazy? Like, what? We're not going to close down the United States. And like 2 weeks to the day, I went into the office, was talking to my manager, and I was like, hey, I don't think we can open today. And then the governor said we're closing down. So luckily, we had that staff member who told us 2 weeks before, we're going to, everything's going to be online and you're going to have to use Zoom. I didn't know what Zoom was. So I figured out over that night, I went home and figured out how to Zoom work. I made a YouTube video, like this, and explained it to the staff and said, you're going to need to download this software and here's how you're going to teach your lessons. And we called up all the parents and we emailed everyone and said, okay, we're switching to Zoom. And so that was Monday. And by Wednesday, we were up and running on Zoom, thinking it was going to be about 2 weeks. And then there was that sort of spring break weeks we were closed. We're like, first week of April, we're back to normal. We're going to look back at this and laugh and go, can you believe we were closed for 2 weeks? Oh my God, that's crazy. And of course, here we are December and we're still on Zoom. And so I think we are able, we figured it out very quickly. Okay, how do you teach over Zoom? Well, there's screen sharing, so I can draw the lessons on my screen. So if a student has a question, it almost looks like a whiteboard. I can screen share the music. So if we're working on a song, I can pull up Spotify and I can play the song over Spotify. I can write down the music on the screen, and I'm just, hey, pull out your phone, take a picture of your lesson. So I'm not writing out your lesson on paper. I'm writing it out on a screen. For books, books are a little bit easier because, hey, we're on page 16 and you're just talking to the person. And so people adapted pretty quickly. We figured out technological things like plugging our guitars and our keyboards into our computer so they get really excellent audio. Because obviously, if I'm playing the guitar in the background, you can hear it, but it's just not as good. If I'm plugged into the computer and you have headphones on, it's like I'm sitting next to you. The audio is great. So we solved those technological issues really quickly. For the dance classes, for the group classes, it was a little more difficult. Everyone set up it's like, hey, if you have a flat screen TV, turn on the flat screen TV, download the app. If you have a computer, a laptop, and the teacher just set up a tripod in a dance studio or in their house and just taught the classes there. And with the idea that it was going to be short term, and we kind of gradually reopened. But we are still probably 60% online, where people, it feels like it's this holding pattern. Like people are like, we want to come back, but it just sort of keeps dragging on and on. So, as a business, it was tough. Definitely challenges. We can't do theater. We don't have the license to broadcast theater, so we can't do theater over the internet. That was one of the things. We can't live stream theater. Somebody owns the rights to that and they wouldn't relinquish those rights. So we couldn't do that. We also couldn't have groups of, 40 or 50 kids. So theater was sort of in suspended animation for now. Some of our small classes we were able to do. We were able to just sort of spread things out, social distance everything, have unusual hours. It's funny, I actually, from a management perspective, made a video of me walking people through the school. If you go to my website, academyofmusicandart.com, you can see the staying safe tab, and there's a video of me, and I walk everyone through the building and say, hey, here's how you're getting in safely. Here's all our different things. Here's how the traffic patterns are going, so that people would feel comfortable and safe. That was a biggie. A lot of people watched that video. We know a lot of that really sort of reassured people that they were going to be safer.
Nice. Yeah, I'm obviously not on the creative end of things, so I was sitting thinking, like, how can you teach someone how to hold a guitar, and all these crazy thoughts. But yeah, I'm definitely not belonging to the creative part of the world. So
yeah, it's as easy. I know this is audio, so people can't see it, but you'd literally pick up your guitar and say, okay, so your strings are 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, your fingers are 1, 2, 3, 4. You're gonna put your second finger here, right? And you just walk them through it. And it's a little bit, and I think, it's interesting because the kids adjusted right away. They're just like, okay, I figured this out. I think the parents were more apprehensive. Like, so you really had to explain, like, your kids can learn this because they're already on like Duolingo, learning to speak Spanish on Duolingo. They're already doing everything on their phone. I have one student who she's like, yeah, I'm learning to speak German on Duolingo. It's like the free app. It's like, so they're already used to being on their phone and learning everything on their phone. Or if they have a question, they look it up on YouTube. Their calculators on their phone. Even in class, they're like, yeah, if I don't understand something in class, I can just like pull up my phone and find the answer, not on like a test, but let's say you just don't understand something or whatever, you're working on a project. So I think the kids were super, adapted right away. So definitely I think it's getting the parents on board.
Yeah. Makes total sense.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool, Chris. Any other fantastic lessons or any resources you have that you want to share around management that you think the audience could benefit from, or anything?
As far I mentioned some of the books. I think for me, the E-Myth was really good. The 1 Minute Manager was a really good thing. I think with the staff, from a management standpoint, it's just keeping things simple and basic, especially if you're in the gig economy and you're dealing with creative people, is understanding that what you do isn't that important to them. So if you're a computer scientist, if you're in the tech field and you have this great job at Amazon, it's the most important thing in the world. I know that the people who work for me, it's not the most important thing in the world for them, and working around that and sort of accepting that fact that, okay, you're going to have to get this person to see this as a job and a commitment with some flexibility, because otherwise, you go crazy. You're always mad at everybody, right? Imagine like if every time somebody did something, you were like mad at them. I mean, you'd be angry all day. So I think it's better to, embrace the fact like, hey, this is what you have, and really work and try to mold your staff and build that relationship to where they want to sort of be part of your system. So yeah, I think that would be the biggie, especially if you're in the gig economy.
I love the mindset, and I mean, one of the things I personally looked at a good few years ago now was this whole anger and unhappiness, and I'm like,
it's like awful.
What is the actual point of being angry? Like, people's like, yeah, but it hurts other people, and I'm like, no, it hurts only yourself. You make yourself unhappy, you make yourself in a bad mood. And I've never seen someone getting angry solve any problems.
Yeah,
so it's literally a lose situation. And I'm like, wait a minute, that makes no sense. Why are we always running around getting upset over all this stuff when it brings us absolutely zero value? And that's coming from a very logical standpoint, obviously. But and executing on it is like, changing that is not necessarily a super easy thing to do. But I mean, I could say I don't think I've been angry for, I don't know, I'd say 10 years by now.
It's not worth getting angry over. You'll lose your mind. You'll go crazy.
And I think it's definitely something that have changed me, and it's definitely something like, people always ask me, are you never unhappy? And I'm like, well, sometimes there's stuff I'm not happy about, but then I can go change it. But the whole, like, it's very much about the blame game. I think it's this thing with, it's easy to blame anyone or anything else for either your failure or your shortcomings. But when you're actually looking at, is there something I can do to solve this? And you see there is, then actually go and doing that will help you move forward, right? And taking that out of it is key.
Oh yeah, and along this lines, there's a great book by Jack Canfield called The Success Principles, and it's an awesome book. And one of the things he talks about is, in every situation, take 100% responsibility. So if something's not managing right, if the business isn't running right, it's easy for me to go, well, but this person did this person did this. But if I say, hey, you know what, I'm taking 100% responsibility. Do I need to train someone better? Do I need to explain something better? Do I need to do this better? As opposed to getting angry or saying, oh God, I don't, it's like, okay, so I own the business. It's mine. My name's on the door. I've had it since 1990. I'm 100% responsible. How do I prevent this from happening? Do I need to explain something to, do I need to train the staff better? Do I need to write a couple more pages in the operations manual? What do I need to do? And if you take that 100% responsibility, and, from a management standpoint, from a customer service standpoint too, if a customer's mad about something, if you say, hey, I'm Chris, I own the business, and you take you just take the other staff members out of it. It's like, hey, I own the business. You can be mad at me. I'm 100% responsible for everything that goes on here. So if it's a shortcoming, it's my shortcoming. It deflates it's like, well, you're taking it all. You're taking the hit. And it almost like 99% of the time diffuses the situation, because you're not trying to pass the buck. You're just like, no, how can I help? Let me resolve this. Forget about that. I'm the person who's responsible. What can I do? And that, the person cools off. So definitely. But that would be another great resource. Success Principles, Jack Canfield, a really influential book in many aspects of my life. That's a great book.
Awesome. Chris, it was fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you very much for your participation. And I wish you the best of luck. And I hope COVID plays out well for you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was great doing your show. I really appreciate the audience. Thank you very much. And to the audience, we'll be back again next week. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Mad Singers Management Podcast. Please leave a review. It means the world to us. You can also learn more about management at madsingers.com.